Because if it's National Feldman Day, we are covered right now.
Yeah, I
Right?
think it's Feldman Day. I think you're right about
Okay,
that.
it's National Feldman Day, which is great because we've got Bruce Feldman of Fox Sports right here to my right. Good to see you, Bruce. How are you?
Good to see you. I'm going to have to convince my wife of that, and then there'll be no changing diapers for me.
Well, every day is National Feldman. Plus, you want to be a diaper changer. Come on now. You got to get in there.
Are you kidding?
Got to get in there, Bruce.
No.
No. Come on.
I do the best I can, but...
Oh, well, I mean, A.J. Green's going to be joining us shortly here on the Rich Eisen Show as the Bengals and the Steelers take on one another. I named that in the first hour of the show. Not like I go on a very long limb when I say it's a must-see game of the week, but I named the Bengals and Steelers as well as the Bucks and the Cardinals and the Cowboys and the Redskins, your week 2 must-see, can't-miss games of the week. 844-2004-RICH is the number to dial if you have one, if you got anything on your mind. The Courtyard Fan Hotline will open shortly. Good to see you, Bruce Feldman. What's going on?
Good to see you, man.
Good to have you back. Good to have you back.
I'm excited for you. I know you had a big week.
I did. Yeah, thanks. I'm still buzzing from the honorary captaincy last week. And now Tom Brady's got big shoes to fill. He's the honorary captain this week for Colorado.
Good
versus
luck
Michigan.
winning by as decisively as they did.
What can I tell you? And the poll question at richeisenshow.com or on our app, where we'd love for you to download. Ask Bruce Feldman that to start this college football conversation off here on this Thursday edition of the Rich Eisen Show.
Yeah, Bruce, we're talking the big college matchups this weekend. So which one is the best to you? Alabama at Ole Miss, Florida State at Louisville, Ohio State at Oklahoma, Michigan State at Notre Dame.
Which one do you say?
Well, I got to say, I work at Fox. We've been promoting
Look at you.
The arch enemy of your school going into Norman, Oklahoma. You got 2 great quarterbacks, J.T. Barrett and Baker Mayfield. Having said that, Lamar Jackson at Louisville is must-see TV right now. And it's funny, I'm not saying this because I'm here and I'm looking at that helmet.
Yeah.
But it's been a while since there's been a young quarterback who has created this kind of buzz. Now, he throws it better than Denard did, but you're talking about a guy who kind of got everybody's attention in September and rolling. Florida State has a really good defense. A lot of people think Florida State could win a national title. I thought Louisville was my dark horse, but it's kind of put up or shut up for Bobby Petrino.
How real is Lamar Jackson? He looks real, but I mean the opponents, with all due respect to Brockman, Syracuse Orange,
not good.
They haven't been.
No,
they're not Florida State. That's why I think a lot of people are excited about this one.
Yeah, now I'll say this. He really got my attention. Last year in the bowl game, they played Texas A&M, and he had over 200 yards passing, 200 yards rushing. Now, Texas A&M defense wasn't great, but the caliber athlete he was making look silly. I mean, Myles Garrett might be the second pick in the draft coming up. I mean, they got some guys out there, and he just tore them apart. When I talked to Louisville staff, and one of their coaches there this offseason said, this guy has first-round talent, and how far he has come. It's the thing about, he's got an electric arm. Remember when Michael Vick just had that kind of snap it and the ball just jumped out of his hand?
Yeah.
He's got some of that to him. I don't think he's quite as dynamic as Michael Vick, but that's saying something. I'll tell you what, though, you can say whatever you want about Bobby Petrino as a human being.
Yes, you can.
But he is a good offensive football coach, and so this is clay in his hands. And it's going to be fun to see what Lamar Jackson becomes.
Bruce Feldman of Fox Sports, college football analyst, right here in the Rich Eisen Show. And so in that Ohio State-Oklahoma game, you mentioned the 2 good quarterbacks that are out there, J.T. Barrett and Baker Mayfield. There's another quarterback who has injected himself into this scenario here. It's Mayfield's backup, Austin Kendall. Did you hear what he had to say?
I did. The fact that his name came up before the game is a bad sign.
Sooner Sports. He was on Sooner Sports. He said, when asked about the Buckeye defense, he said, I think they have a really basic defense. Baker, he'll light them up. I'm really looking forward to it. And if my number's called, I think I can do the same.
And Baker was supposed to be the one who was the pop-off kind of guy. I mean...
The backup QB. On TV, number one. How does that happen?
A true freshman who's the only other scholarship quarterback they have right now on the roster.
Right. I think we need to send Dilfer there to tell him about what the backup quarterback
is. Bob Stoops pulling him into the office immediately?
I think Bob Stoops having his teeth pulled right now. I mean, it's like, who are you and why are you saying this? I'm kind of dumbfounded by that. If you had told me Baker had said something kind of inflammatory, it wouldn't have shocked me because Baker has that in his personality. Yeah. But this kid, I don't know. I mean, I'm curious how our buddy Greg Schiano is going to handle it.
Yeah, Schiano, that's right. He's on the staff there.
And they've been very good so far. Now, I haven't played anybody of Oklahoma's caliber, but You know, they haven't given up a touchdown yet, and they've scored 3 defensive touchdowns. So, you know, that just makes the game a little more interesting.
Now, I have no dog in the fox hunt, as you know, but I think this is the must-see game of this weekend because, as I mentioned in hour number 1, Oklahoma getting a second loss right now would be fatal. It's fatal for the national championship.
And it'd be devastating for the rest of the Big 12, too. Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, you lose to Houston, who I think is a good team, and then you lose. Those
are 2 quality losses, I guess.
But you can't overcome it. Here's the problem with it, too, Rich, is in that conference, the way it's set up, let's say they were to start out 1-2 with those 2 losses, and then they get into conference and they run the table. There is no conference title game. People are going to go, yeah, you beat up on the Big 12. The Big 12 is the worst Power 5, clearly, because you couldn't, get through the non-conference. Mm-hmm. So they would have no chance, even if they ran the table, if they lose this game.
And then, of course, Ohio State to enter the Big 10 conference schedule with 1 loss. I understand that Urban's had quite a nice run, with the exception of last year's Michigan State game, but I mean, you have to figure that running the table in the Big Ten would be pretty difficult to do there, too. I mean, there's a lot on the line is what I'm saying in this game.
There is, and I feel like the credibility of the Big Ten has gone up so much since Urban's team won the national title. And you've seen, obviously, Jim Harbaugh's in the conference. D'Antonio has maintained and done well. And I think we see Iowa. I know people like to write them off, but they're a good football team. Now, there's another game in the Big Ten that has a chance to kind of boost up the Big Ten's credibility. It's Oregon and Nebraska. I mean, it's a little below the radar because there's so many good games this week. If Nebraska wins that game, there's been a lot of pressure on Mike Riley because they had such a bad year last year in his first year, and they lost a lot of tight games. But if they can win that game, it adds to the credibility. And certainly Michigan State plays Notre Dame. That's another, big game. And we're all talking about the power and the weight of a conference now, because that's what the playoff committee is all going to be factoring in.
Bruce Feldman here in the Rich Eisen Show studio. What are the shots for Ole Miss to take down Alabama this weekend on
I would call it as a puncher's chance. Now, they've beaten them 2 years in a row. They have Chad Kelly, who is a terrific talent, and he's got some guys who can stretch the field. In the last couple of years, they have done a lot of damage against Alabama with big plays. Now, the question for Alabama is Nick Saban, they've outscored 2 teams 90-16, and he's been pissed off about it. I think the biggest frustration he has is they have not run the football the way he thinks. I think they're going to try to impose that at Ole Miss. I think they will, because I think Ole Miss is kind of banged up. I think it's rare for somebody to beat Nick Saban 3 times in a row. Joe Tiller did it, and there was one other coach who did it. I don't know if it was, I'm trying to think if it was Lloyd Carr or who it was, but it's only happened twice. I don't think Ole Miss is going to get him a 3rd time. I really don't.
And then some other games to talk about with you. You've got USC at Stanford. USC, as we all know, got waxed by Alabama. And one game after another, even in the win last week, we've seen players ejected doing stupid stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, how important is this for Clay Helton, in your estimation, taking on Stanford?
I don't think it's a must-win game because Stanford's a tough place to win. But I think the stuff you just talked about at the end was just significant. Jabari Ruffin's, his stomp in the Alabama game was disgraceful. And to not do anything beyond just the short-level suspension of, the half game or the rest of the game, to me, was a bad sign. He also had, they've had a couple of players dealing with some significant issues related to a sexual assault case it's just a bad vibe right now
What do you think Lynn Swann is thinking? Down
I'd love to know what he's thinking, because he did not hire Clay Helton. That was on Pat Hayden. I like Clay Helton a lot. But the challenge here is, I'm not sure why they jumped into having to decide that hire right before the Pac-12 title game. Ultimately, who you're going to lose Clay Helton to? Memphis? I mean, where else? Who was chasing after him? If they had wanted to, they could have got Tom Herman, who had coached one big year at Houston. He's a California guy. I think he would have been a star at USC. They opted, obviously, not to go that route. Clay Helton lost his first 2 games as a head coach, and then they got thumped by Alabama, as you said. If they lose this game and he starts out 1-4 and has the discipline issues that people are scratching their head at, he needs something positive to happen in a hurry, because USC is so unpredictable. You just don't know what direction that administration's going to go.
And you were in Baylor this past weekend?
I was. I had
What's
Baylor.
What's going on down there, man? And what's with Art Briles saying I made mistakes and then just leaving it at that. Like, what mistake did you do,
Yeah,
Art? And then saying at the same time, I'm coaching next year. What in the world is this all about?
I think the question a lot of us have, and it's a natural question, is, okay, you're apologizing. What exactly are you apologizing for?
And how are we supposed to just, oh yeah, you can not be specific about it and get a gig somewhere else?
Well, now here's the deal, though. What he's saying on national TV is one thing. I get that some people are saying, listen, he can't really specify what he did wrong because of, legal matters that are ongoing. Does that make him more at risk for lawsuits? I get that part of it. So they managed him up on how he was going to handle that. I don't doubt that Art Briles feels bad about what happened. Saying, hey, we're going to, if the victims are here, we're going to have a hug session and a cry session. I think that sounded like he didn't really grasp the pain of some of these victims here. I think when he sits down, if there are schools that are going to talk to him, and I think there probably will, they're going to have more specific answers. Now, the part where I think schools will have a hard time pushing the button on signing him or hiring him this offseason is, what happens if more stuff comes out? I mean, we're not that far removed. Sean Oakman's case, there's a lot of eyeballs looking at that. If there's more stuff that's in there,
now you own it.
You own it. That's exactly right. It's Baylor's story, but now it's your story too. And I think that's the thing that's going to give a lot of people pause ultimately, because I think it's even more than, right or wrong, a lot of administrators, and it's probably wrong, but a lot of administrators look at things going, okay, this is going to be bad publicity for 3 days, and it's probably not going to be good, whatever. Eventually, you know how the news cycle works. People move on, like we've moved on. Now, Bobby Petrino's issues were self-inflicted largely. I mean, it's related to his marriage. It wasn't related to strangers and people on the campus and everything else. Bobby Petrino, yeah, he got another job.
The safety of an entire community, potentially.
Much different threshold, right? And I wonder at what legal risk, if something else gets alleged at the new school, is a school that much more in jeopardy legally? I mean, these are all issues that I think people are going to have to sort out before they hire him, because on paper, just on what he did on the field, I mean, this wasn't a guy they're looking to get rid of for any other reason. He did wonders for the Baylor program on the field.
So to wrap up our conversation, you say Florida State Louisville is the game that you don't want to miss. I understand. Don't worry, Shanks isn't listening right now.
Shanks is always listening.
Shanks is watching soccer, I'm sure.
You can watch them both.
Don't worry.
That's an early game. Ours is a late game.
What's the poll question results right now? What do you got?
Yeah, best game of the weekend, Ohio State, Oklahoma, 33%. Florida State, Louisville, 30%.
Shanks is pushing that poll button. That's why.
Is that what he's doing?
Yeah, Shanks is your buddy Charles Davis was weighing in.
Right now?
Yeah.
Do you see the trend, though, of these schools kind of scheduling these tougher opponents early, continuing, although the schedules are made 5-6 years in advance? Because Oklahoma's in a tough spot.
I definitely do, because the committee's saying they value it. Now, the part that I would like to see more of is the on-site campus. I still would, want to see the matchups, but I'd rather see them, go to Oklahoma as opposed to, play it in Jerry World.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Always good to be
really
here.
Appreciate it. Thanks very much. Bruce Feldman. Check him out on Twitter at Bruce Feldman CFB. Also, check out everything that he puts out there on foxsports.com. Good to see you. Please come back. You bet. That's Bruce Feldman right here on The Rich Eisen Show.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.